If you're a large family looking for a car, chances are you're looking for something like this. This is the new 2023 Nissan Pathfinder. It's a large SUV, and let's put the emphasis on large. This is a big car. What you probably don't want to hear is that the best family car for a large family is probably going to be a people mover, something like a Kia Carnival, but a lot of people just can't get their heads around that. Sliding doors, people movers, they're just not cool. Apparently, the large SUV is cool enough, and this is what people want. This Pathfinder competes against things like the Toyota Kluger, the Kia Sorento, Hyundai Palisade, but this does have a lot of space and practicality on the inside to its advantage. But it's not all perfect with this car, and I want to run you through everything that you need to know about this Nissan Pathfinder if you're looking for a new large SUV for the family. And when we review these cars, we do properly review them and live with them. And I'll show you what my daily grind is like with my family using this car with things like prams, kids seats, kids crawling all through the interior, keeping that interior clean as well, because they inevitably do get very messy. So let's have a closer look at this Nissan Pathfinder. The next generation Nissan Pathfinder has recently had its range slashed in half. Gone are the cheaper ST and STL variants, which means the range starts here with a TI in all-wheel drive spec only. So that means this TI is effectively the entry-level model, and it's priced from $70,030 before on-road costs. There's only the TIL grade above this spec, and we've got a good amount of standard kit on offer. There's a 360-degree camera system, leather accented seats which are heated up front and for the second row outboard seats, and there's also power adjustment for the driver. There is also second row sunshades, a 13-speaker Bose sound system, heads-up display, and a powered tailgate. The Pathfinder's carryover 3.5 litre petrol V6 makes 202 kilowatts and 340 newton meters, and that runs through a new 9-speed torque converter automatic gearbox to all four wheels through an on-demand all-wheel drive system. While claimed fuel economy is 10.5 litres per 100 Ks on the combined cycle, we were only able to match that figure with highway driving. So expect to use around 12 or 13 litres per 100 if you spend a fair chunk of time in the suburbs. So in terms of size overall, this new Nissan Pathfinder is a little bit bigger than a Toyota Kluger, for example, or a Kia Sorento, Hyundai Santa Fe. It's more, in size comparison, like a Hyundai Palisade or even a Kia Carnival in overall length. Another interesting comparison is against this Ford Ranger XLT. As you can see, the Ford Ranger is still noticeably quite longer. It's about 30 centimeters longer overall, in fact. And another comparison here, the new Nissan Pathfinder is slightly shorter than the old generation model. It's about 5 meters or just over 5 meters in overall length. It sits on the same wheelbase, which is 2.9 meters long, and that is a carryover wheelbase from the previous generation Pathfinder because this is a carryover platform, and that tells you why it's also a carryover engine. Jump in behind the wheel of this Pathfinder and you start to get that sense of how big this car is straight away, and that's a good thing for a family car. Aside from the high amounts of space overall, I do like the storage that you've got in this Pathfinder. Firstly, a big center console. You've got a couple of cup holders here. These fit big bottles, insulated cups and that sort of thing. It's not just for little coffees and piccolos. And equally, the wireless charging pad here fits large phones as well, which is a nice touch. There's additional storage underneath there for things like handbags. Little storage shelf here, that's pretty good. And also, there's room for big bottles in the doors. So this will just absorb all of that stuff that you tend to carry on the day-to-day usage, especially when you've got a big family in those back seats. But this is comfortable. This is quite nice. This is not top spec, by the way. This is a TI. You do need to go up to TIL for things like, you probably get a sunroof and you get things like ventilated seats. We've only got heated seats here in this specification. But these seats are comfortable, they're nice and broad, they're easy to clean because they are this leather-like material mostly, so you can just wipe them down when things get messy. And you know, if you do have a family in this car, things probably will get messy from time to time, but this does feel pretty well sorted for day-to-day usage. Infotainment here, it's easy to use. You've got buttons down the bottom for navigating around the system, and you've got a volume dial, always really handy to use when you're on the run. It's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, there is navigation in there, and there is also digital radio, so it ticks all of the boxes for everyday usage. And there is a 360-degree camera in there, which is good quality, and it is handy because, like I said before, this is a bit of a big rig, so if you're parking in tight spaces and that sort of thing, it's a really handy thing to have. Further down here, we've got our air conditioning controls. This is a 3-zone climate control setup here. You can control the rear setup from the front, which is handy if you've got kids in the back and it's a hot day, that sort of thing. And in terms of steering wheel controls, this is all pretty nicely laid out. You can control things like the music up here. And you've got a semi-digital instrument cluster in front of you here. There's kind of a big trip computer in the middle, and then you've got analog dials on each side, a speedometer and a tachometer. But you can dig through a bit of information in there with things like navigation, what music you're playing, fuel consumption, and that sort of thing. It works quite well. It's not the most tech-laden out there in the segment. You do have some competitors that have a fully digital experience there, which can be better. Some people might prefer that, but in terms of actual usability, this is fine. And we do have a heads-up display there, which gives you things like traffic sign recognition. It'll tell you what the speed limit is and give you the speed readout as well, so you can dodge those expensive speeding fines. If you're looking at something like a Pathfinder, chances are you've got a family. They're a big family already, or they're a growing one, and you might have baby seats like this in the back here. This is how I've been using the car. I've got 2 little girls. I've been doing the daycare run. To be honest with you, I haven't been using the amount of space on offer in this Pathfinder as yet. The kids just aren't big enough, and there isn't enough of them. As you can see, there's a heap of space, and it pays dividends just for everyday usability. In terms of being able to access and get in and around the place, there's a load of legroom here for the kids, and you can slide these seats forward and back. That comes in handy for the 3rd row, which I will get to in a minute. That's a fairly spacious area as well. But for example, if you're parked on a busy street and you need to access the kids to put on the seatbelts, take them off, pick up a drink, whatever it is, put out a fight, you can climb in here quite easily, and there's enough room to actually get in and do what you need to do because this car is spacious. Something else this car can do that not every other large SUV can. In between 2 seats, look at that, I can fit reasonably comfortable in there. So that is a really handy feature to have if you're going to be ferrying other people around on top of your kids. This is a functional space. Now I've got those baby seats out of the way, I can talk about a few other things in the 2nd row of this Pathfinder. Firstly, we've got air conditioning controls here. That's pretty good to have. And you've also got heated seats, which is a little bit of a luxury, I feel, for a family car. There's a USB and USB-C power outlet there on the back. No air vents, but don't worry, they're mounted up here in the roof. Another thing I really like to see in a family car, these bad boys, really good for when you're having a doze, adults and kids alike. And probably my favorite thing about the 2nd row, maybe it's a little bit boring, showing my pragmatism maybe, but I do love the twin cup holders in the doors here. They're big, they fit a lot of stuff. There's another little storage bin here as well. You can fit a bottle in further down. There's just a lot of storage packed into this door, which is otherwise just general space that might not be used for anything else. Got a pop down armrest here, and it's more cup holders there. So you've got a lot of storage and a lot of space and comfort. Another thing you might not notice when you do sit in the back, but visibility is good. This seating position is slightly higher in comparison to the front. So if you're a kid, if you're an adult, you can kind of see what's going on in the world around you. And that just makes you a little bit happier as a passenger, I think. One of the really important ingredients that makes this Pathfinder a genuine 3-row SUV is access to the 3rd row. There is a bit of a cool party trick here. There's a little button down the side. Press that once. That seat pops up and forward and out of the way. One touch and it gives you really good access into the 3rd row. But there's another nice little detail here which I do really like. Once you put the seat back, it kind of presets itself into a position further forward where you've got enough leg room in the 2nd row for an adult, but it's freed up a bit of space for people in the back there as well. It's a small detail, but it means you're not mucking around trying to adjust seats and make things work all the time. So if you're using the 3rd row all the time, that is a really nice little detail. Let's jump in the 3rd row and see what it's like. All right, this is the 3rd row of the Pathfinder, and I've got to say it's good. A lot of 3rd rows have not much headroom going on, but this is a big, boxy shaped SUV. So I've got a lot of headroom here. That's pretty good. Legroom is decent. My knees just tuck in. I don't have acres of space, but I do have enough space, which is important. The backrest is a little bit upright, but I can adjust that back Got a giant pram in the back there, by the way, so I can't go all the way, but that little bit of adjustment there has made a difference. This is pretty comfortable. Visibility is good. I've got a USB power outlet, 2 cup holders in the back here, so that's 4 in the third row. There's a lot of cup holders overall actually in this car, which is great for family usage. I've got to say, aside from something like a Kia Carnival, this is one of the better third rows that you will come across in the large SUV segment. Electric tailgate in this Pathfinder, which is handy when your hands are full. And as you can see here, I've got our Big Bertha pram in the back here. It's seen better days. It does get a fairly hard life with us, but this pram often doesn't fit in the boot of some SUVs, small and medium-sized ones. But at the moment, this is in full 8-seat mode, and I've snuck it in here upright there. I've even got a little bit of extra space for a backpack on the side. So the boot space overall is pretty good. I'll just pull it out to show you what it's like. You could fit a lot of gear in here quite happily. I'm thinking things like shopping, your weekly shop, something like that. There is a 12-volt power outlet, which is handy there, and a couple of tie-down points. And let's have a look what's under here. Even more storage. Look at that. It's not as good as a Kia Carnival, but that is really handy. You could throw a bit of extra gear under there quite happily, even in full 3-row mode. Let's put the car in 5-seat mode, drop this third row down. First things you do is pop these headrests down and out of the way, and then pull this lever here. 60-40 split, and as you can see now, your boot is, well, it's massive. We're doing some driving in the Pathfinder now, and as you can see, and probably hear at times as well, we've got some rain here in Sydney, but we will continue on. This Pathfinder is a nice car to drive. It's very comfortable overall. Clearly Nissan have put this more in the ride comfort part of the world than anywhere else. It's a really big vehicle, so you do need to get used to the size of it. I did mention that 360-degree camera before. That is a useful ally, but just note when you're going around corners and that sort of thing, this is a big SUV, so you need to drive it accordingly. But once you're used to the size, this is an easy car to get around in. The ride comfort can start to feel a little bit crashy and bouncy at times as the car is absorbing what's going on underneath. It's not as composed as some others out there. I suppose it's a little bit more of an American take on a large SUV instead of a Asian or European style tune of the suspension. But it is good. And what I mean by that is this has a little bit more of a soft and wallowy tune overall. It's not as tied down as others. It's definitely not cumbersome or anything like that, but it's when you get to a piece of road that is quite rough, you're going over speed bumps and that sort of thing with a little bit of weight in the back of the Pathfinder, it does start to bounce around just a little bit, but that's a little bit of a smaller detail, not a large experience overall. In terms of powertrains, you've got only one choice in this Pathfinder. It's a 3.5 litre petrol V6. That might sound familiar because it is a carryover from the previous generation Pathfinder. It's powerful, it's got a fair amount of torque, although it is available all high up in the rev range. It's pretty smooth and quiet, so there's no issues there, but it's obviously never going to be as efficient as a turbo diesel or a hybrid petrol, which you can get in other competitors, Kias, Hyundais, Toyotas, and that sort of thing. This does get along pretty well, and it's much more composed these days because Nissan have thrown the old CVT that used to be in the Pathfinder in the bin. We've now got a 9-speed torque converter automatic gearbox, and that is a much more refined and composed setup overall. It gets the best out of this engine in terms of shifting smoothly, shifting quietly, and that sort of thing. And there's definitely a lot of performance on offer here. This TI variant that we've got at the moment is all-wheel drive, and that is a big help to this Pathfinder when you've got over 200 kilowatts going to the wheels. Sometimes in front-wheel drive mode only, those fronts will spin quite quickly and it loses all of its composure very quickly when you're trying to take off. But with this all-wheel drive system, you do get a little bit of wheel slip from time to time, just like that, before the all-wheel drive system kicks in. So it's not as sophisticated an all-wheel drive system as others, but it is better than the two-wheel drive version. In terms of fuel economy, I've driven this car for over 1,200 kilometers so far, and I'm averaging 10.4 litres per 100 Ks. That does sound pretty good actually for a 3.5 litre naturally aspirated V6. It's worth noting though that that is mostly on highway driving. I've done a few long runs in this car. My daily commute includes a lot of highway driving as well. I've done a little bit of town driving as well, dropping the kids to daycare, running around town, going down the road to get some milk and that sort of thing. But the majority of kilometres has been highway. So if you're going to be using this around town mostly, you're likely going to see a number that's higher than that. I would say 13 litres per 100 or around that mark. So does it tick the right boxes for family usage? In terms of space, obviously this thing is massive. You do need to get used to that when you drive it. And the powertrain, it's very good, but it's not the most efficient. And running costs is a very important element, I think, for family buyers. So you do need to sweat those details. But that aside, this is comfortable, it's refined, and it's got a lot more technology these days, which is also very important for the modern day buyer. It is a shame that this Nissan Pathfinder has launched with only one engine option. This 3.5 litre petrol V6 is good, it's smooth, it's powerful, it's refined, but it's not as efficient as other options in this segment. And that is a very important consideration for the large SUV buyer, especially if you're driving it mostly around town. Nissan haven't confirmed whether a hybrid variant of this Pathfinder will come in the future. But they are bringing out hybrid variants of the X-Trail and Qashqai smaller SUVs, so we live in hope that maybe something else will come in the future. Things to like about this Pathfinder, it all comes down to size. If you want a big SUV and you really want big, this is worth looking at because that third row, second row and front row, they're all spacious, they're all well appointed and comfortable. I like the access to the third row in particular, in the middle there, and the amount of storage space you've got inside with things like cup holders, cubbies, storage bins and all of that sort of thing. This is well set up for everyday family usage. So if you can stomach the fuel bills that come with this car, this is a good option to look at.